Hello, Gary here. Quantitative Literacy 1, Lesson 1.4. Let's check it out. So we're going to play around with the sides of numbers, magnitude, with fractions, decimals, scientific notation. And we're going to compare numbers like we've been doing a little bit. I'm just going to do a lot more of it. And the application this time is to look at how we use water in the world. And the world's a big place, so we got big numbers. So we have people, we have water, and we've known for a long time that water is going to be a bigger and bigger issue in the world. And back in 2003, there was evidence that let's see, that's not the one I want. About 40%, there we go, of the world's population didn't have access to adequate sanitation facilities. And I don't believe that's improved very much. Also, prediction is that 4 billion people in 2050 are going to suffer from severe water shortages, which we're already experiencing. Like, consider the trouble with the Colorado River and the states that are trying to share that water. There's just not enough to go around. Spain's having a severe drought right now. We're going to look at mostly China, United States, and India, and we're going to look at how much water each country uses compared to the number of people in those countries. Let's get going. Remember, we're working with scientific notation often, which allows us to write big numbers smaller. So let's take a look at what we have here. And scientific notation, big thing there is writing it correctly. The leading number should be smaller than 10 and 1 or greater, which means you should have no more than one digit to the left of the decimal point. So we've got US here, and that's 317 million. It's one way to write that number. Or as it's written above, 317 with zeros and commas. And in scientific notation, we would like the decimal point right there. So there's one digit to the left. So that would be 3.17. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 10 to the 8th. And remember, on a computer, multiplication is the asterisk. And then we have the world, or the Earth population. And this is in 2014. It's increased a bit since then. And that is 7.2 billion. And the 7 is the billion part. So I'm going to put a 7, comma 2, and then start putting zeros and commas so it looks like a billion. It's a million. And there's my billion. So scientific notation version would be 7.2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And hopefully you've seen a billion enough that you remember it's 10 to the 9th. And what we want to do is we want to compare these two numbers in size, like how populous is the US compared to the Earth. So let's take a look at our next question here. We want to write a ratio comparing US population to the world's population using a fraction. And so we have those different numbers to do that with, and we can use any one we want. We want to simplify the fraction so that it has smaller numbers in both numerator and denominator, and there's lots of ways to simplify that. And when you click on these boxes, there's often more information. Okay, so let's do that. And for fun, since in the last section you were playing with scientific notation, I'm going to use the scientific notation versions, and then I'll compare it to other versions of a fraction. So we want to compare US to the Earth according to that statement. And that order of division is important. So if we look back at the question, write a ratio comparing the population of the US to the world using fraction. So again, it said, so why did I put them in that order? Because it said US to world, which mathematically means literally US divided by world, which I chose to write as a stacked fraction instead of a line fraction like that. So I've got 3.17 times 10 to the 8th divided by 7.2, excuse me, times 10 to the 9th. And let's see, if I just whip that out on a calculator, it's going to give me some decimal stuff. And notice that I was asked here to write a ratio using a fraction, not decimal numbers. But I can enter a mathematical expression here. And this one here, I want a simplified proper fraction. So for the first one, this would be a fine answer for part A there. So that's one possible answer, or I could do something like write the numbers out in regular notation. I'm just going to use spaces instead of fractions here. So yeah, that looks like billions, and that looks like millions. So I can enter either of these two answers for part A. For part B, I want to reduce. And for reducing, I think I like this one better because then I can just cancel a bunch of zeros. So I could divide top and bottom by 1,000. I could divide by 1,000 again. So I could say as a fraction, the numerator could be 317 and the denominator could be 7,200 when I'm done with that. So I'm going to check that those are actually matching. And so this is important that you find ways to check your work. All right, so first answer number 1 was 3.1, or answer A, 3.17 times 10 raised to the 8th. Oops, raised to the 8th. There we go. And then I have 7.2 times 10 to the 9th, which ends up about being 0.04, so about 400ths, or 4.4%. Now my claim, after I cleaned it up a little bit, is that's the same as 317 divided by 7,200, so I should get the same decimal. Cool, so they do match. So what am I sure of right now? Well, I'm sure I have a ratio as a fraction here of the original numbers in scientific notation. Then I have my cleaned up version, and the decimal versions match, so that means they're equal. So I'm on the right track. Could that be reduced further? Well, one cool thing about Desmos is it's got this fraction button, and Desmos says, sorry, that can't be reduced further. If a fraction could be reduced further, like let's just take 12 over 18, Desmos will reduce it for you. Okay, so I got lucky that 317 over 7,200 doesn't reduce further. All right, so moving on, the ratio you found compared part of the world's population to the whole population, so it is reasonable to rewrite it as a percentage. So let's calculate it as a percentage to one decimal place, and then we got to pick the right sentence. Okay, so we found that the computer thought this was about 0.00, too many zeros, 0.044 something, something, something. Decimal version 028, if I wanted to put that many in there. And I want that as a percent. And remember, to change from a decimal to percent, we multiply by 100%, clean up the 100 times, and leave the percent. So multiplying by 100 is going to shift the decimal twice. So that would be 4.4028%. And then I was asked to write it as one decimal place as a percent. So my final answer should be 4.4% on that one. And what is this comparison? This is US to world. So that means the US has about 4.4% of the world population. And then we want a sentence that says that. So again, figure this out. We needed the numbers for each of those. We needed to know the order of the comparison, and that helps us state what that final percentage means. So then do your best to pick the right sentence there. All right, next, China's population was 1.39 billion. Compare China's population to the world population. So same thing we did with the US, we're just going to do it with China. I'll get it started and leave you to finish that. So we want to compare, let's check that, China to the world. So just like the US, we're going to do a comparison of China to world, which means that's China over world. And China is 1.39 billion back in 2014 versus the US, the world, excuse me, 7.2 billion. So here we could cancel the billions. Boom, boom. That gives us 1.39 over 7.2. And we could type that into Desmos and ask Desmos to simplify the fraction, but I'm just going to do that here. To shift the decimal point twice, I could multiply top by 100. Then I have to multiply the bottom by 100. So this would be 139 over 7. Let's see, move that one to 720. Oops, 20. All right, so we shift that decimal place twice. This one twice requires us to fill a 0. So if you type, say 1.39 times 10 to the 9th, 10 to the 9th is billion, 7.2 times 10 to the 9th into your calculator, you're going to get some decimal answer, compare it to that decimal answer, and they should match. And my guess is this is probably a reduced fraction. Check on Desmos. And then convert that to a percent after you have the fraction, and then use that percent to write your statement here. Okay, next thing we want to do is build a table, and I'm going to do this on a spreadsheet. So I am going to copy this information. And then we have some conversions, standard versus scientific. I'll get to that in a second. So often you can copy a table like this into a spreadsheet. So I have a spreadsheet ready to go here. And so I'm just going to start right on the edge of that last number. So notice my cursor changes shape when I get there. I'm going to scroll over and up just to the very beginning of the word country. If you copy too much, the spreadsheet will get confused. All right, so if I highlighted that correct, I should be able to go there, paste. Cool, worked. To adjust the size of the columns, point to the line between the column letter headings and double click. And it will resize to make it big enough to see what you need to see. Okay, so let's see. That didn't copy over correctly. Let's look back. That should be 10 to the 9th, which would be billions. So let's adjust the spreadsheet there. To indicate that that's a power up there, double click in there, and then we'll do Shift 6 to show that the 9 is a power. That didn't copy over correctly. All right, it's good. And then we want to write that in standard notation, so we can just multiply each of these numbers by billions. So I'm just going to add another column called total water footprint. Double click here at the top to widen it a little bit. And then to display those numbers correctly, I'm going to do an equals. I'm going to take those numbers and actually do the multiplication by 10 raised to the power, Shift 6, 9. And so that turns it into billions. And Google suggests an autofill, which is cool. If you're not using Google, if you're using Excel to do this, then what you would do is after you type that, hit enter, and then click back on it, then point to the bottom right corner and fill it down. All right, next thing we should do is put some commas in there. So we're going to go to the more formats here, and we're going to make it a number. Now it's going to put 2 decimal places, so we don't need those. We'll get rid of them after. So we're going to click number to get the commas in there, and then we'll decrease the decimal twice, so it's just whole numbers. And let's make this a little wider. Cool. All right, so let's see, do I have this right? So this is 1,000 billion. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is all those zeros are my billions. I multiplied in. Okay, so those are the water footprints as regular numbers. So they give me an example here of taking China's population from standard notation to scientific notation, and then same thing for the water footprint. So for the water footprint, it already had a 10 to the 9th. I have to put 3 more decimal places in there. So that's 9, 10, 11, 12. So for example, in scientific notation, that's going to be 1.368. Notice it says not valid scientific notation because I'm not done typing. Times is asterisk, and some of you put an X there accidentally, and I should get a syntax error if I left that in there. Watch, 10 raised to the 12th power, syntax incomplete. So it says I didn't type it right. That's what syntax means. It doesn't like that X. It needs to be an asterisk or times, and now it's happy, no more red messages. Pay attention to those messages. All right. So you're going to fill out the rest of this with standard notation, which would be something like 1, 3, 6, 8, and then type in those 9 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so fill in the rest of this. And again, I'm getting the computer to do that one for me. I don't care about the scientific notation one on the spreadsheet. Okay, so then you're going to let's see, select a number and a unit combination that best describes this contextual sentence. The United States water footprint was about blank cubic meters in 2011. So US water footprint is 800 billion, right? That's billions up there. And that's one of my options right here. So 821. 10 to the 9th is a billion. Okay, next thing I want to do, and this is why I have the spreadsheet, is calculate water footprint per person. So that means we have to take the water and divide by the people. And the spreadsheet's a great way to do that. And again, you could choose to do this on a regular calculator. All right, so new column, water footprint per person. And then I could do 2 things. I could do a word wrap like I did there, or I could just double click there to extend it. Okay, so that's extending it. Or if I say, no, I want it that wide, then what I would do instead is over here, there's a button up here called text wrapping, and I would say do the wrap. So you got a couple options there. So here I want to write a formula to calculate water divided by people. And to do that, I'm going to have to fix this column here because it doesn't have the millions in there for the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is not going to understand that comment up there. So let's redo this column here by, I think I'm going to double click there and get rid of the phrase in millions and then just multiply those numbers by a million in here. And yeah, just add the zeros. So a million has 6 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we did format as numbers. Let's check it out again. So that's format, number, and then back off those 2 decimals. And let's make that a little wider. That a little wider. That's good. All right, so let's see, double check the numbers in the original. So US, for example, should be 312 million. 312 million. And this one is 1,000 million, which would be a billion. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, the ones in the billions place. And the same with the Chinese, the ones in the billions place. Those look good. All right. So next, water footprint per person. So we want to go equals, and then we want to take the water as a regular number and divide by the people as a regular number. Google asked if I want to fill down. Yeah. If you're an Excel user, Excel won't ask that. So after you hit enter, you'll be down here, click back on that cell. And then after you click back on it, then go over here. It's a two-click process. Click on the cell and then point to the bottom right corner and then fill down when your cursor changes to that plus, and it will fill that down. Homework says for that one, we want values rounded to 1 decimal place. Cool. So they're all highlighted, so I can just go to the decrease decimal button and drop it down to 1 decimal place. And we could put some commas in there to make it easier to read. Go back to 1 decimal place. So we can see that in China, people there use about 1,000. Oh, we should put the units in there. Cubic meters per year. So this is per person. Let's adjust this. So space, parentheses. So it would be cubic meters, according to column C, per year. And we already have the per person there, so I don't need to say that again. And then let's make this wide enough so the per person fits above and the cubic meters per year fits underneath. Nice, that looks beautiful. Cool. All right, so those are our answers. So it looks here like the people in the US use more than twice as much water per person per year than people in China, and almost 3 times as much water per person per year as people in India use a lot of water. And in the homework, you're going to make an estimate of how much water you use and then tell me about it. Okay, so I think you can handle question 9. Read those carefully. Let's see, determine the ratio needed to complete this statement. Give it as a number rounded to 1 decimal place. Let's give it a shot. Page, please. All right. In 2011, the average person in the United States used blank times more water than the average person in China. Okay, so we're going to do a comparison of US to China. So then that means we want US over China. And looking at the numbers, we were guessing it was about 2 times. It also says more there. So there's a couple ways to interpret that. So we'll have to play around with this. Let's go back. Uh-oh, lost my mouse. There it is. Conflict between my magic pad and the touchpad on the computer. Let's see. Yeah, let's give it a shot. All right, numbers needed. We are doing water comparison. So that means we need the US number and the China number. So let's just copy that over so I can see them both on the same screen. Current page. Yep. So those are my numbers. And the order there is China. Well, sorry, I'm getting used to my new magic pen. India and US. So we want US 2,631.4. So this is, I think, the way to interpret it, divided by 1,016.3. And if the more wasn't there, I'd be absolutely certain that was the way to interpret it. There's a slight possibility that we want the difference, the absolute change between these two, and then divide by China. But I think this is probably what we want. So let's try that on the spreadsheet. So again, the spreadsheet can make this comparison. So let's see, underneath here, I'm just going to make a note, US to China. And then next to that, I can put it underneath here. So here I'll go equals. And then what I did on my notes is I said, take the US number and divide by the China number. And you got to do equals first to make a calculation like this. So it's equals and then point click. All right. So I'm getting about 2.589, blah, blah, blah. And I think the homework wanted that to one decimal place. One decimal place, yep. So in the spreadsheet, we can just say, change the number of decimal places to 1, and it should say 2.6. All right, 2.6 times more. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable interpretation there. So this is approximately 2.6. So I think this makes sense. The average person in the United States used 2.6 times more water than the average person in China. So if we take 1,000, multiply that by 2.6, we get 2,600. Yeah, seems reasonable. Excellent. And we are done. That's the last page. All right. Now on your homework, let's go to the next assignment here. You are going to do a water. This is going to load in a new window because you're going to do a file upload here for me. And these are screenshots of my water footprint. And I think it's the last question here that says, head over to the water footprint calculator and run through the whole thing. And at the end of it, they'll give you an estimate of your individual and your household water usage. And you're going to take a screenshot of that. If you're not sure how to take a screenshot, just Google screenshot on Windows, screenshot on Mac. And it's not too hard. And then you can save. So you have to do the screenshot, save the file, and then upload it. If you have any trouble with that, let me know. Take care. Do good math. I will see you in the near future. Bye-bye.